Hey, welcome back to the CannaTech podcast. I'm Harry Brelsford. We're back with Dr. Paul Seaborn at the University of Virginia. Don't know if that's fall colors right over your shoulder. We're coming up on pumpkin season before you know it. Maybe you're already starting to celebrate.
Yeah, it's still pretty warm and humid here in Virginia, but we'll have a beautiful fall as we usually do, and a busy few months in the cannabis world too, I think. So
Yeah. Well, you wanted to talk about New York, New York. What's going on with New York?
yeah, so I think it's been a long time. People have been wondering if and when New York will open up adult use, and yeah, it's one of those big prizes on the map because we're looking at 19 million residents, maybe upwards of a $5-6 billion market, and I think what's probably of most interest to your followers is, unlike some of the other states, there's a real tug of war going on between whether the big multi-state operators who have some of the medical licenses in New York already, whether they were going to get priority in the market, or whether they're going to give priority to the other end of the spectrum, a lot of small entrepreneurs who either have a hemp license and who can then start growing full-scale marijuana, or also those who have some sort of social equity justification, in particular looking at those who have a conviction, actual conviction on their record from cannabis. And so far, it looks like it's that second group that's going to get priority. They've
Oh,
issued
good.
some early licenses to hemp farmers, so the hemp farmers who've only been operating under the Farm Bill can start growing full marijuana for the market, and they're starting to take applications for social equity retail operators. So that's a pretty unusual thing. Most of the states have just gone with whoever they know from medical, and it totally changes who has those initial licenses on day one. Yeah, I guess the last thing, anyone who's been to New York, or I haven't actually been to Manhattan, but a number of my UVA students have been, and other folks I talked to, and there's all sorts of, I guess, gray market or kind of early entry stores just popping up anyway. They're not going to wait for licenses, and so you're seeing a little bit of that in New York too, which is always interesting to watch.
Yeah, with those pop-ups, I think I saw something about that. Any sense of what the punishment is? I mean, could you go to federal prison? I mean, if the punishment's nothing, then they'll pop up and then pop up again and pop up again. A lot like illegal limousine drivers at East Coast airports, right? They're back the next day.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I think that's the assessment they made, is that it's a legal substance in New York now. And so, although they don't have a license to sell, they don't expect the penalties to be as high. They're not engaging in interstate commerce or something that would bring in necessarily federal involvement. So it's not only storefronts, but you have a whole fleet of trucks that are driving around Manhattan, and you know, now you see them, now you don't, kind of thing. So
Yeah, leave it to New York. I always enjoy old time movies about prohibition or gangsters in New York City, black and white. New York's a rowdy town. I mean, this makes perfect sense given their history over literally centuries. They're pretty rowdy.
yeah, well, and when you think about cannabis, I mean, this has been one of the biggest world markets for decades as well. And so I think one of the factors weighing on the regulators there is, if they don't offer a strong legal option, people are going to find other options anyway, much as they've done in California. So
Oh, it's
I, yeah, I mean, there are people who've been treated well by the cannabis market in New York without having legalization. So it's a kind of a different flavor than some other states where this is a brave new world altogether.
Well, a couple final thoughts, folks. And Paul, maybe I'll get you involved in this too. I've reached out to 20 MSOs. My friend and yours, Randy, helped me put together a spreadsheet, and I've reached out to basically the PR department at MSOs to talk to the CTO, the Chief Technology Officer, and have a podcast series. So I want to have an MSO podcast series for a while. And I'll double check my inbox. Maybe I've heard back from a couple, but I already can tell. Here's what's interesting, Paul, is with the reach outs to PR, kind of going through their websites. These are big businesses. I mean, it's very apparent that we're dealing with, I call it a corporation versus what I knew the industry to be several years ago when I got my head back into it. And you go to the dispensary in Kitsap County across from Seattle, and they're kind of onesie twosies. There were a lot of just onesie dispensaries. Maybe they now have a branch, and very different flavor. I'm pretty excited about this.
Yeah, I mean, I think the nice thing about the cannabis space is there's room for both extremes, right? Just like you see maybe many years later in the wine industry and in craft breweries, you've got those little niche and craft and really unique operators, and you've got the Anheuser Busches of the world at the other end. And so yeah, we're actually at a point where we have some of these multi-billion-dollar market cap, multi-state operators, and from a technology point of view, and they are a bigger fish to land if you're going to provide them with hardware, software, services, and they have needs just like everyone else. So I think that's a great idea for a series, and it's going to be interesting to hear, you know, a little bit of how much they roll their own versus go out to the market for solutions, and who they're using, and maybe kind of what their spend is, because I think it's a little hard to gauge from the outside, where a lot of these are not publicly traded in the
Yeah.
traditional way. There's still maybe a mix of private investment or some Canadian stock exchange listings and things. So there's still a lot to learn about what they're doing behind the scenes.
So, Paul, we're going to get you back the last week of December, just literally just before Halloween, and then the November 8th primary elections. And the reason is I want you to kind of like ESPN on Saturday morning with college football. I want you to call them like you see them with some of the ballot initiatives.
Yeah, I should have at least 5 or 6 to give you a prediction on. But yeah, between now and then, people will argue whether the teams are allowed to get on the field. So maybe in a certain state they'll manage to block the vote altogether. But yeah, I would say by late October we'll have plenty to talk about going into November.
All right, my friend. All right, teach on.
Thanks, Eric.
All right.